Oh, yeah.
That was plugged into the headphones.
Oh.
That's why. It's all
Testing. Good evening. My name's Nelson Bowstead. I'm the MC for the second half of this evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the second half, and particularly members and any guests, or are there any visitors here tonight? Okay, so you all know where the toilets are and the exit is. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to, cell phones are off. I'm going to step out of the MC role for 1 minute to make an apology. My extra email was hacked today, and most of you, many of you, and a lot of others have had emails from me that I did not send. They're scam, they're phishing, delete them. My apologies. Now, in terms, we have another announcement to make, and I'll get John Casey to come up and cover that.
Thank you, Nelson. It wasn't me that sent the emails, promise. But I have an apology to make. I run the MDC, and I went to check on my MDC status this afternoon and discovered that I hadn't actually opened it for this month, which is a very big, bad no-no. So I apologise for that. It is now open. The subject was, as we decided at the meeting at the beginning of the month, to walk a new path, and it will close on the 30th of May, which is Friday of next week. So are people happy for it just to run for a 10-day period, or do you want to extend it for the next month? All right, we'll run it for 10 days. So look forward to entries. It should be now up and running. And apologies for not updating it.
Okay, tonight's program will primarily be on the competition critique and results of the Natural History Projected Image 2. But just before we get to that, a few notices. Is there any news at the moment on the winter school?
It will be open in a couple of weeks, according to Ian, and it's going to be at Kaikoura with Gillespie.
Okay, did you all hear that? You should get a notice in the next couple of weeks. It's at Kaikoura, and it's Rachel and her husband who will be leading the tutorials. Last weekend of July. Okay, thank you. Any other notices about upcoming meetings or anything like that? Okay, promotion of competitions. We have the New Zealand Landscape Saloon, formerly known as the Lowy Thomas, that closes on the 2nd of June. So details are on the CPS Facebook page. So get your landscapes out. Don't use remove tools on them and submit them for the Lowy Thomas, New Zealand Landscapes. Okay, we'll move on to the program itself, and I'll ask Nicola Jackson to come up to introduce the program and run that side of things. Thank you, Nicola.
But he's been kind enough to judge this competition. Where the comments aren't up on the website, he's done an audio commentary for us. If there is anybody that particularly is interested in having that commentary, the audio file is available, and it's also available on the Zoom session. Any other questions, just come and talk to me later. And we're running this from grade status, so instead of our normal running sessions where we would score things from a grading session, grading them from lower to higher, the commentaries will be running through in a different commentary just because of the difficulties that we've had with AVs this week, but enjoy the night. Thank you.
Hi to everyone there at Christchurch Photographic Society. It's Jeff Beals from Pukekohe Franklin Camera Club, and I've been invited to judge your natural history projected images #1 competition for the year, and thanks very much for that invitation. Just a bit about me. I've had a lifelong passion for photography, and particularly enjoy creative photography and landscape and nature imagery. I've been an accredited member of the PSNZ judging panel since 1995 for open photography and 2007 for nature. I've regularly judged at club level and have also judged the North Shore Salon several times, the National Exhibition several times, and the Wanganui Salon, the Dunedin Salon, and the first PSNZ International Salon. I've had a strong interest in bird photography, which in 2011 led me to volunteering on Tiritimatangi Island, initially as a guide, then subsequently as a member of the Kokako monitoring team. And this has enabled me to indulge my interest by observing bird behaviors and photographing some of our rarest bird species. Developing my image assessment skills remains a work in progress. I really enjoy evaluating other people's images and find it hones and stimulates my own photography. It's always an honor and a privilege to see what other people are doing with their images, and I thank you for the invitation and opportunity to view and assess your work. So I'm going to begin my assessments with the C grade in the random order presented on the website, and the first image is White Heron, Kotuku, Ferrymead, Christchurch, New Zealand. This is a nicely taken image of the Kotuku. I think that the image has been somewhat lowered in its exposure in order to try and get the best out of the whites. I think you've probably just got enough detail through the whites on the back there to avoid having burnt anything out, so well done for that. I think the background, however, is somewhat dark, and it might have been a useful idea to open up the shadows a bit, and that would have given you less of a a high contrast looking image. You could try also just removing, lowering the contrast. That might take some of the highs out of the whites and some of the lows out of the darks. Try one of those and see how you like it. And that's my best suggestion here. I'm happy to give this one an acceptance. Our next image is common starling, Storus vulgaris, taringi on fig tree. And this has been nicely captured. The lighting has really done a nice job of showing up the luminescence in their feathers, showing that they're not actually a black bird when you get them in the right light. And I think you've got sufficient sharpness in the eye and the bill. The rest of the body is falling off a little bit, but the key area is sharp. I like the depth of field you've achieved here with a nice soft bokeh in the background. I think, once again, this image could perhaps use a little less contrast or opening up the shadows. One of those two I suggest that you try. And otherwise, this is a nicely composed image, and I'm also giving this an acceptance. The next image is Cortinarius species, and this is a nicely captured cluster of 3 different sizes of the same fungus, and I like that. You've done a good job with your depth of field to get all the heads nicely sharp, but just falling off a little bit in the mosses in the background, and that's fine. For my money, this image is suffering from the strong blue light in the forest, and I think that perhaps modifying the blues towards the yellow end of the spectrum somewhat might handle that blue and give us back a more natural colour for this species. I otherwise like and appreciate this image, and I've also given this an acceptance. Our next title is Tarapunga Croicocephalus novahollandiae scopulinus, and otherwise known as the red-billed gull. And this is an interesting piece of behavior that we're seeing here, and I like that aspect of this image, that we're seeing something other than just a static bird. I think that you could have done with cropping this in. I don't think the bright green foliage at the top left really helps us very much, and its space behind the bird. I would rather just keep the space in front of the bird, and I think that the bulk of that green could have been cropped and left us with a stronger image. I also think that the exposure here is a little bit contrasty. We're starting to lose the detail in the whites, and we're also losing details in the shadows. It's not that the details aren't there, but I think we could have a much nicer representation of the bird if the contrast was reduced or the shadows opened, and I suggest you have a look at those possibilities. And I've given this one, I've not awarded this one. The next image is hedgehog, Erinaceus europaeus. And this is a good capture of the hedgehog. Generally speaking, I'm enjoying this quite well. There are issues here with overexposure, particularly in the pebbles behind the animal, and also the brightness in the spines and the strong orange bokeh in the background. Those areas in the top left corner of the image are drawing my eye. The face has nice detail, but it's quite dark by comparison, and I just find my eye is drawn to that top left corner. My suggestion here would be to pull down your highlights to get rid of the overexposure, open up the shadows to get more light on the face, and perhaps try a subtle vignette on this one, just since the face is so dark. You really want to try and draw the eye to the face and away from the edges of this image. So those would be my suggestions, but nice capture. I like your composition as well. I think that's been nicely handled, and I haven't awarded this image. Next up, we have New Zealand white-capped albatross cleaning itself, Diamedia cauta stedi. First thing I want to say with regard to the naming is that this bird is now generally accepted as thalassarch rather than Diamedia. This is because recent DNA testing on the molly morks, which this is one of, has shown them to be sufficiently separated to require a new species name. And so that's where thalassarch came from. Diamedia, of course, is the albatross family. And so on to assessing the image itself. It's a nicely captured image of this bird, and in quite bright light that's given you a little bit of difficulty with your exposure here. You've handled it quite well, but I think nonetheless the whites, particularly around the eye, are just a little bit over bright, and we're not quite seeing it as we should. I think just pulling back on your highlights, opening up the shadows just a tiny bit as well would give us a better, more natural appearance here. And other than that, I think it's a nice image. It's sharp throughout. I like the inclusion of the reflections in the water. I think that's a nice addition to this image, and I've awarded this, well, I haven't awarded it, I'm sorry to say. So no award for this one. Our next image is Red Admiral Butterfly Vanessa gonorilla kahukura wing underside. It's a very nice capture of this Red Admiral. I think the biggest issue for me with this is just the brightness of everything around it. Makes it that much harder to focus on the Red Admiral itself. And I think anything that you could do to pull our eye more back onto the butterfly itself would be great. Perhaps try toning down highlights and see if that gives you enough. This is perhaps another one where a subtle vignette might also help to draw our eye into the main subject here. And those would be my key suggestions. I have awarded this a high acceptance because I think it's a very nice example of an image of this species. So congratulations for that. Our next image is called Gliding Duo, and this is a pair of red-billed gulls riding on the wind over the sea. I like that you have got your horizon straight here, and I like the pairing of the birds. They're close enough together not to give us a ping-pong effect, so well done there. I'm not so happy with the exposure of the image. I think that it is a little bit on the underexposed side. That probably is a reflection of the very grey day. My suggestion here would be hold your whites, but open the exposure on your darks. Another thing that I often find helps is if you pull the highlights down, but then add whites back. That gives a boost to the brightness of the whole image without overexposing the bright areas. So give that a go. Excuse me. On the naming front, Gliding Duo is much more a pictorial title, and I think you would be better to stick with something that isn't pictorial in a nature competition, but I can't see in your rules where that's a requirement, except if this was a New Zealand nature competition. And I think this is just a nature competition, so it doesn't fall outside your rules. It's just something to bear in mind, though, if you're entering into the PSNZ nature section, you do need to be careful about your titling. I have not awarded this image. Next up, we have Hiran Dinner Day Swallow. And this is a beautiful image, really nice. The exposure's great. Just a tiny little bit of possible overexposure on that white bit of the wing, but not enough to bother me at all. You could try pulling back your highlights just a tad. That might just pull back that area sufficiently to reduce its draw on the eye. And the bottom left corner, the bright area, I can see that you've had a go at toning down that area, and well done for that, but I think it probably needs to come down a bit further. But in this competition, this is a high quality image of this bird, and I'm very happy to award it an honours. And now we move on to the B grade section, and our first image here is New Zealand fur seal pup. These creatures always seem to be very endearing with their huge baleful eyes, and you've captured that very well here. I also like the way that with the seal being up on a rock, you've been able to get down underneath and show us the animal from a lower position than we might normally see, which I think is very good. The issue for me with this is the huge bald sky, which has virtually no texture in it. And I think that it might have been quite useful to pull back the brights in this image and open up the shadows to A, give us some texture in the sky, and B, provide us a little bit more detail in the darks around the belly of this animal and under its nose and around its neck, where we're losing detail to shadow. It's not that the detail's gone, it's just that our eyes are not as drawn to it as if it was a bit more open. So those are the key issues I find with this one, and it's a very nice image, well taken. I haven't accepted it. Our next image is German wasp, Vespula germanica, and this is a nicely captured image, mostly sharp. Just unfortunate that the area with the least sharpness probably is the head and the fine hairs around the tip of the head of the animal, which would better be the sharpest part of the image. We're also a little bit over bright on the rear of the abdomen and the tips of the wings, and perhaps pulling back the highlights there might help. Probably open up the shadows in order to produce a little bit more detail in the black areas, and particularly where the head is encountering the shadows in the flowers behind, and it sort of gets a little bit merged with the blackness. So those are my thoughts. The bright green on the right and the bright white at the bottom right are areas that would best be toned down, or even you could probably even crop them out and go for a portrait image and be just as successful, I think. And that would prevent our eye from being quite so drawn by those areas. And I've not awarded this image. Our next image is Salvin's Albatross Toroa, and this is a very interesting image of the birds scrapping over a fish which to me looks like a gurnard, and interesting expressions and action here. So I find this a very strong image in that respect. A little bit disappointing that we've lost the tips off wings left and right. Much better, of course, if they were included, but in the heat of the action, I'm sure you did the best that you could. I like this image, and I'm awarding it a high acceptance. This next image is treetop New Zealand wood pigeon, also known as the kereru or kupa in Maori. And this is a cool shot of the bird from underneath. I like that it's looking at us and we can see both its eyes. The sky is providing a nice texture in the background, so that's good too. Where I do find we have an issue with this image is that you have been shooting somewhat into the light here, and although you haven't got light flares coming in, you do have a softer image in the area of the image running from top left to bottom right. If you take that diagonal line and you look at everything to the left and below that line, that whole part of the image is somewhat soft and grey, and that's because of the light leaking in. If you are a Lightroom user, you might try a graduated filter on that area using dehaze, and you'll probably find you can enrich the contrast in that area and improve the look of the image. So that's something to try, but the composition is good, and I've accepted this image. Next, we have white-faced heron striding past the reeds, and indeed we have. Nice composition, a little bit of action here with the bird wading, and we can see its foot, which is a nice addition in a nature image. It's just a little bit compromised by the rather strong contrast here that's rendering the whites overexposed and the darks dark enough that particularly the back of the head is merging into the reeds, and the back of the tail also. And I think those things might be fixed by pulling back on your contrast. And if that doesn't quite solve it, you might pump a little bit of light into the shadows. Yeah, give that a try, see how it goes. And I've not accepted this one. And that brings us to the A grade section, where our first image is orange paw fungus. I like the composition of this grouping of the fungus. I think that's very nice. And the backlighting was a nice idea too, showing us the gills of these fungi. Where I think we're running into a problem here is we have just too much contrast. We're not getting sufficient detail. I don't want lots of detail, but some detail in the dark shadows in the bottom corner and up around the fungi themselves, the 3 small fungi. That area is just a little bit too dark to give us sufficient context. I like the diffuse background. I think that works nicely. But I also think we're losing detail in the brightest of these orange pore fungi with the backlight basically somewhat burning out the detail. So all in all, I think this was a nice attempt, but I haven't accepted or awarded this image. Our next image is ground squirrel feeding. And this is a cute creature. I like this somewhat monotone nature of the image. I love the attitude of the animal feeding on the dry grasses, and I really like the catchlight in the eyes. She is brilliantly sharp throughout, which is great. And I like that we've got sufficient fall off to the rocks behind that we're getting some diffusion there. The composition works well here too, and I've awarded this a high acceptance. This next image is Ngutu Pare, New Zealand wrybill. And this is nicely captured. Composition's great. I love the diffusion in the background, and you've got the bird fully in focus as well. So well done on that front. I just feel it's a little bit on the contrasty side here, where the whites are just tipping towards starting to burn out, and the blacks are deep to the point of not being able to see some detail that we might otherwise. So it's perhaps just a matter of my preference here, but I think just a little bit less contrast here would be a help. So it's still a very nice image, and I'm happy to accept it. Our next image is Multiclavular Mucida, Nina Valley Walkway. And this is a really beautiful image, and the lighting has been just perfectly handled, and I really wanted to award this well. Unfortunately, at the bottom of the image there is a strip of vertical lines which suggest to me that somehow the image has been slightly expanded in size. Also at the left, I just noticed as well, it's stretching to the left. So the image has been perhaps expanded a little, but in the process, it's dragged a layer of pixels in each direction to produce straight lines out of it, and that's just not in keeping with the image at all. So I know you almost certainly didn't notice it and never intended for it to be that way, but unfortunately it is, and you should try cropping it back and entering it again. And I'm not really under the circumstances able to accept it. This image is white-capped shy mollymawk, Stewart Island. And you've done a nice job of capturing this sharply with a strong diagonal running through the image. And it gives us a real sense of how big these birds are in flight, with the wingspan of the birds shown completely here. I like that the sky is also showing some texture. A little bit more texture would have been better, but it is what it is. I have awarded this one an acceptance. Kotuku chick grooming is next, and I also really liked the chick in this image. It's beautiful, beautifully rendered, but the image is detracted from by the parent at the top left being so underexposed intentionally to draw the attention of the viewer onto the chick, I'm sure, but so underexposed as to make it unnatural, and I don't think it's quite representative of what you actually saw, and so I've not been able to accept this one. This next one is side-striped palm pit viper. And it's a very nice capture of the snake. I think it's probably been captured in a zoo setting of some sort, in a captive setting. And what leads me to think that is that the lighting is very green, and I suspect it's got fluorescent lighting. And as a result, the colors are not really natural enough. We've got quite a green cast, and I suggest that you get onto your tint slider and give it a little bit of magenta and see if you can get it rendering to a more natural kind of color. Apart from that, though, the composition is great, and the diffusion, the bokeh in the background has been nicely managed. And I'm not finding the green tint too offensive, and I am awarding this a high acceptance. Next is southern black-backed gulls, adult and juvenile, squabbling, brackets karoro, which is Maori for southern black-backed gulls. And I really like the adult gull in this picture. I think it's great. The detail in the eyes and the beak are really good, and the attitude towards the juvenile is very strong. So that's great. The juvenile, however, overlapping the black wing of the adult is getting somewhat lost. The head is somewhat more difficult to separate from the rest of the image, and that's unfortunate. Perhaps if you'd let it just come down a little bit further and got that overlap out of the picture, it might have given you a better shot. But I know how these things go. You probably just got one chance, and you did well to get what you got. So well done. I like the composition here. I like the sharpness in the image, and the depth of field has been well handled too. And I've awarded this an acceptance. This image is white-capped albatross. And it's a really lovely image. You've caught it in the process of taking off. So we've got movement, we've got splashing of water, but you've got the beak and the eye, and most of the near wing crisply sharp. So sufficient movement to tell us he's on the go, and yet sufficient sharpness to be a really nice image. The only critical thing I have to say about the image is that we've got a slight color imbalance here. I think we're just a little bit on the yellow side. I'd probably pump a little bit of blue back in. Maybe it looked too cold and blue and you gave it a bit of yellow to warm it up. But if you did that, I think you've just gone a little bit too far. It's not quite natural enough. So that's really my only suggestion here. And otherwise, I really like the image, and I've given this an honours. Next up is white-faced heron, Egretta novaelandiae with prey. And this is a good, well-timed capture. The crab looks like it's clinging to the beak and hoping not to be downed. And at the same time, the bird is nicely captured with its shadow, just a little bit on the contrasty side though, and as a result we're not really seeing the detail of the eye very well, and the dark bit behind its bill is very dark. And the underside of the bird is very dark. The white on its head is bordering on overexposed, and I think it needed a little less contrast, perhaps a touch less highlight, a touch more opening of shadows, just to let us see the bird more clearly. And so those would be my suggestions here. Otherwise, the composition is great with the rings of water around its feet, and the reflection in the water, all being nice inclusions. And I've given this one an acceptance. And this one is Cortinarius species. And I like the grouping that you've captured here. The depth of field is pretty good. It could be better because the fungus on the left is just on its far left edge is just fading out of sharp focus. But there is enough focus there to be able to see what's going on, and I think that it passes from my point of view. I love the diffusion in the background. So the depth of field is pretty well handled, just needed a tad more towards the rear of this cluster. And I like it well enough that I'm awarding this an acceptance. Next up we have New Zealand tui in Pirongia blossoms. I'm confused by your title. Pirongia is a place, it's not a type of blossom. Maybe you took this photo in Pirongia of blossoms in flower, but it's just a confusing title. I certainly don't know of any cherry blossoms that are called Pirongia, and that's what the way it's been named implies to me. The image itself is a rather beautiful capture of the tui. Just a little contrasty though, to the point that the poi are overexposed, and we've got deep blacks on the breast where we're not seeing any detail. And so this is another image where I would recommend opening up the shadows, maybe reducing the contrast somewhat in order to be able to see more of the detail of the bird. The poi shown against the black breast with no detail makes it look kind of cavernous instead of real, and it would have been good to see detail in that breast. The head shot though, and the iridescent greens of its head and the browny red of its eye are perfectly captured, so no problem there. As it stands though, I've not awarded this image. This one is Carduus nutans, nodding thistle, and this is a perfectly well composed and exposed image. I like the depth of field you've achieved, and there's lovely sharp detail in the three heads that we're seeing. Having them on the dynamic angle like that also helps add to the interest of the image. And there's not much more to say really. It's not a wonderfully exciting image, but it's a perfectly good natural history image that would help us identify this species in its dried state. So well done for that. I've awarded this an acceptance. Next is Century Dragonfly, Hemicordelia australii. And this is quite a spectacular image. Really sharp detail throughout, and yet sufficient movement to see that it's in flight. Lovely diffuse background that's very complementary there with the oranges of the insect and the greens of the background, the mute greens. It all tones very nicely as well. Placement in the frame is pretty bang on, and I think you've done a wonderful job here. I know from my birding photography how hard it is to capture something that's skittish in flight like this, and well done. That's an excellent job, and I'm happy to award this an honours. Mandarin ducks is our next image, and these are beautifully captured. The exposure is pretty bang on. The whites are just a little bit bright perhaps, especially around the eye of the male. I love the colouring of the female, which is more mute, but it's quite, they're very similar in their coloration to the American wood duck, but distinctly different at the same time. But just the bright gaudiness of the male and the mute, subtle colours of the female makes them very similar. I don't know if these are perching ducks, but certainly the American wood duck are, and they look to be quite closely related. Anyway, these are nicely captured. I like that you've got separation between the two, so they're close enough together to be one block of subject, and yet separated enough that there's no distraction for any of the detail. So that's good. Sharpness is an issue though, and particularly around the female's eye and even the male's eye, we're just not quite sharp in the main subject of the image, and that's just unfortunate. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to award this image. This image is greater flamingos, Phaneropterus roseus, displaying feeding behaviour, Walvis Bay, Namibia. And there's a lot to like about this image. I like that we've got a cluster of 3 near the front where the colours are brighter, the birds are bigger in the frame, and then we've got a beautiful recession of flamingos behind that are less bright and slightly less strong colour, and then falling off to quite mute birds in the background. So this is a beautifully handled image, and I particularly like that all of the birds are completely in the frame, and yet they seem to be randomly spread. They're not you've composed it well by your placement and what you've decided to include and not. So I think this is a stunningly good image, and I'm very happy to give it an honours. Next we have Muscus leucogaster musk deer, and it's an interesting capture of this animal. Just a little bit contrasty, and while we've got a brightness in the eye on the right as we're looking, we're really not seeing the same level of detail on the left. We know the eye's there, but I think this is a case of once again, if you look at the horn on the right as we look at it, and the side of the face on the right, all of those areas are just a little bit overexposed, and then the darks are underexposed. So this is another case of too much contrast. I think we should pull back on the contrast here, maybe open the shadows a little, and see a little bit more of this bird in less bright conditions. Sorry, not bird, deer. That's pretty much it. I like that the placement of the deer in the frame and the fall off of focus in the background is working well too. I haven't accepted this image. Here we have Mycena circacea, Nina Valley. And the fungus itself is brilliant. You've done such a nice job of capturing that fungus. The cap is nicely sharp, the backlight is shining through, and all of that makes for a wonderful fungus image. The problem I have with it otherwise, though, is that there's too much other busyness going on. The bright wavy green leaves on the right I find quite distracting, and they need toning down. And the bright yellowy and red bokeh splotches at the top of the frame on the middle and right, those are really distracting. Also, the bright bark on the left top edge of the log, all those things need toning down or cropping out. I think you could crop above the wavy leaves on the right and get rid of all of the specular bokeh up at the top, and that will tighten up the image quite nicely. And just tone a few more bits and pieces down, I think you'd end up with a very nice image here. Unfortunately, as it's been presented, though, I haven't been able to award this one. Our penultimate image is Fire Damage, Christchurch, Port Hills. And this is a well seen and taken image. I think it's quite appropriate nature image as well. So in that sense, congratulations. I think you've done something a bit different here, and I like it. Where things are not working so well in your favor is that the image itself is not sharp, and we needed there to be some area in the image that was critically sharp, but nowhere from the foreground through to the background is critically sharp anywhere, and that's really problematic. The bright area in the bottom left corner also really needs toning down because it's bright enough to draw the attention quite strongly, and those are the key things that are wrong. But the diagonal composition of the line of the hills running through the image and the recession of the smoke, all of that is very nice compositional detail, and I like that aspect of it. Unfortunately, with the sharpness being a problem, I haven't been able to award this one. And our last image of the night is Gunnera, which is, I'm sure, the correct name of this. I don't know Gunnera, but from my point of view, a natural history image is about helping us to see and identify a species. And this has been taken in a much more pictorial context, looking at light and shadow and texture, and not really with an eye on helping us to identify this species. And it would be very hard to identify this species from this image. So I like your pictorial style, but unfortunately this is not really a nature image, and in that respect I'm unable to award this image. So that brings me to our Best in Show award. And there were two candidates for me, the Century Dragonfly and the Flamingos. Both of those were absolutely beautiful images, but for a degree of difficulty and also personal preference, I've selected the Century Dragonfly as our Best in Show of the night. And I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me yet again. I've enjoyed viewing your images and learning from them too. And I hope that you found my comments useful and informative. And we'll look forward to seeing you at some stage around the Motu. And thanks very much again for the invitation. Good night. Hi to everyone there at Christchurch.
Right, thanks very much. He's just got some images of his own that he would like to share with us before we do our presentations. Have you got that ready, Alistair? Yeah, thank you.
Open up, I can hear the march of a distant drum that plays out of time with my heart. I wanna hear it louder, call beckoning to my air, unrecognized anywhere like this, like this, like this.
Oh, that was a wonderful set of images, and thanks very much, Jeff, if you're watching. We all really enjoyed that critique and your time putting into that. Without further ado, we'll move on and present the awards. Can I do acceptance first? Yep, they're not in the, do it by that, Not by grade, by score. That's it, eh? By score, not by, yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yes, it works. First one is the Ngātu Pāre New Zealand Bible by Maxine Cooper. White-capped shy mollymawk, Stewart Island by Peter Curtis.
No, he's not here.
Keeping it. The White Heron, Kotuku, Ferrymead, Christchurch, Francesca Davies. Common Starling, Sturnus vulgaris, Tarangi on Fig Tree by Carl Smith. Nice shot. Southern black-backed gulls, adult and juvenile squabbling, Karoro, JK. White-faced heron, Egreta nova chelandai with prey, Jane. Barnes, whoops, just Jane. Oh yeah. Cortinarius SP. Oh, that's you.
Species.
Oh, species. Diana Andrews.
Thank you.
Cardinus Nuttons nodding thistle, Richard Cooper. John 6, which is John McCall. His cheerleading squad's over here. Treetop New Zealand wood pigeon, Kiriru or Kakapu, Karen McConkey. Oh, I don't think she's here either. God, people turn up to these things. This is kind of fun. Ground squirrel feeding, Ron Willems. Had me fooled. Side striped palm pit viper, high acceptance, Trish Brown. Selvins albatross, Toroa, high acceptance, Sue Coombs. I know where she is. She's run away again. Red Admiral butterfly, Vanessa Gonorrhea, Kahuka wing underside, Neroli Keating. White-capped albatross, Dawn Kirk. Greater flamingos, I'm not going to say that, displaying feeding behaviour at Walvis Bay, Joe Curtis. Hirundindundai swallow, Denise Fuller. honours. And honours and best in show, the Century Dragonfly, Hemicordulia australale, Les Armon. Thanks everybody for a entertaining night, and I'm sure we all found that was a success. I'll pass you over to Newell. Thank you. Nelson.
Thank you, Nicola. I think we need a big hand of applause for Nicola. Organising these things and putting them together is quite an achievement. Thank you and well done. Excellent. And I'd echo her comments that do come along. I know it's cold and freezing out there, but it makes a diversion and you never know what you might see or learn. And getting an award is a big achievement. Okay. The next CPS competition closing dates are for the 22nd of May, projected image photojournalism. The 29th of May is the open print number 3. Also on the 29th of May, although that's now been extended, the showcase open monochrome. So that's, as you heard before, that has been extended. Further on out, no, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Okay, it's not been a good day for me. See, the showcase open monochrome closes on the 29th of May. Would anyone like to speak to about that? Submissions on the website? Yep. Okay, go to it. Monochrome. And the MDC, which I was referring to, 31st of May, MDC 5, Walk a New Path, has been extended. Just looking further ahead, because the 5th of June, this venue is not available, so to give you fair notice, the 12th of June is the PI Saloon. Next meeting is going to be here, the 29th of May. At 7 p.m. we have the Mono Showcase, and again, put your entries in. 8 p.m. is the competition critique and results for PI 4. Are there any other notices or anything else anyone wants to bring up at this stage? Right, I have written down here, promotion of competitions, the NZ Landscape Saloon, which was formerly the Laurie Thomas New Zealand Landscape Saloon, closes on the 2nd of June. Details are on the Facebook page, all very well written and posted just lately. Okay? Right, well with that, I'll thank you all for coming on this night, such as it is in winter. I'm sure it's winter, not autumn. And I'll give thanks for opening and closing to Dennis, meet and greet to John, sound to Gordon and Tim, projection for Alistair, the 7 p.m. tutorial, Alan Moore on Lightroom, thank you very much, Alan, and supper coordinators Dennis and John Casey. We invite you to next week's program. Good night and drive safely home.